Part 1. The silent stars the Velthari had been hunting for 11,000 years. Their empire covered 800 star systems, and every world they found met the same fate. They would arrive, take what they wanted, and leave nothing behind. Entire civilizations had been erased from existence. Species that had built cities and dreamed of the stars were now forgotten, their bones ground into dust on dead planets. Commander Zethral stood on the observation deck of his ship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall, even by Velthari standards, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed with a soft orange light. His species did not feel what humans would call mercy. They saw the universe as a garden, and themselves as the gardeners. Weak species were weeds to be pulled. Below him, a blue planet rotated slowly. It was beautiful in a simple way, covered in water and green land and white clouds. The third world from a small yellow star. His scouts had found it nearly a century ago, but the Empire had been busy with other harvests. Now, finally, it was time. "Initial scans are complete, Commander," said his science officer, a younger Velthari named Kethfor. "The planet has approximately 8 billion specimens. They call themselves humans. Technology level?" Zethral asked. "Primitive. They have basic nuclear capability and simple digital networks. No spacefold technology. No energy shields. They have not even left their own solar system." Zethral made a clicking sound with his mandibles. This was good news. Easy prey meant a quick harvest. He could strip this world and move on to the next within a few cycles. "Prepare the harvester ships," he ordered. "We begin in 6 rotations." On Earth, life continued as it always had. People woke up, went to work, complained about traffic, and watched television in the evenings. Nobody looked up at the sky and wondered if something was watching them. Why would they? The universe had always been silent. But in a small observatory in New Mexico, a young woman named Lucy Warren was staring at her computer screen with a frown on her face. Lucy was 28 years old. With dark hair she kept tied back and glasses she constantly pushed up her nose. She had wanted to be an astronomer since she was 6 years old, when her father had shown her the stars through a backyard telescope. Now she worked the night shift at a radio telescope facility, listening to the universe for signals that never came. Most nights were boring. She drank coffee, checked data, and waited for her shift to end. Tonight was different. The readings from the moon were wrong. The gravitational data showed an anomaly, a mass that should not be there. Something heavy was hiding in the moon's shadow, something her instruments could detect but not explain. Lucy ran the calculations 3 times. Then she ran them again. The result was always the same. There was an object behind the moon, and it was massive. Bigger than any asteroid. Bigger than any spacecraft humanity had ever built. She called her supervisor, a tired man named Greg, who was more interested in his retirement than his work. "It's probably equipment error," Greg said, without even looking at her data. "Run a diagnostic and file a report in the morning." "But the readings are consistent," Lucy argued. "Something is there." "Warren, do you know how many false positives we get every month?" "Dozens. It's always equipment error or solar interference or some graduate student spilling coffee on a sensor. Go home, get some sleep, and we'll look at it tomorrow." But Lucy did not go home. She stayed at her desk, running more tests, gathering more data. By morning, she had a file full of evidence that something impossible was hiding behind the moon. She also had a terrible feeling in her stomach. In orbit, Commander Zethral reviewed his harvesting strategy. Earth's major population centers had been mapped. His ground teams knew exactly where to land, exactly how to process the humans efficiently. The entire operation would take less than 1 planetary month. "Commander, we have detected some unusual signals from the planet's surface," Kethfor reported. One of their primitive observation devices has noticed our presence. Zethral was not concerned. They cannot understand what they are seeing. Even if they suspect something, they lack the technology to respond. Continue preparations. This was true. Humanity had no weapons that could threaten a Vulthury harvester ship. Their fastest rockets would take days to reach the moon, and the Vulthury would see them coming hours in advance. There was nothing these creatures could do, but Zethral made a mistake that his species had made many times before. He assumed that because humans were technologically inferior, they were also inferior in every other way. He did not consider their creativity. He did not consider their stubbornness. And he did not consider what they might become when they had nothing left to lose. Lucy. Warren spent the next 3 days trying to get someone to listen to her. She contacted other observatories, sent emails to universities, even called a journalist she knew from college. Nobody took her seriously. An alien ship behind the moon? It sounded like a bad movie. On the 4th day, she finally reached someone who would listen. Dr. Henry Shaw was a xenobiologist at a research institute in Colorado. He had spent his entire career preparing for the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, and most of his colleagues thought he was wasting his time. When Lucy called him with her data, he did not dismiss her. "Send me everything you have," he said. "I want to see it for myself." Lucy sent the files. Henry reviewed them overnight. By morning, he was on a plane to New Mexico. When he arrived at the observatory, Lucy showed him her readings again. Henry was a calm man, the kind who never raised his voice, but his hand shook as he looked at the data. "You understand what this means," he said quietly. Lucy nodded. "We're not alone." "No," Henry said. "It's worse than that. This ship, whatever it is, it's not here to say hello. Look at the energy signatures. These are weapon systems. This is not a research vessel." Lucy felt cold. "What do we do?" "We warn everyone we can," Henry said. "And we pray that someone believes us before it's too late." The time had already run out. High above them, Commander Zethral gave the order his species had given to countless worlds before. Begin the harvest. The silent stars were about to witness another tragedy. But this time, the story would not end the way the Vulthury expected. Part 2. First Contact. The invasion began on a Tuesday morning in March. The sky was clear over most of the world, and people were going about their ordinary lives. Children walked to school. Parents drove to work. Coffee shops filled with tired customers. Nobody knew that in a few hours, everything would change. The first strikes came from orbit. Beams of white light, brighter than the sun, fell from the sky and hit military bases across the globe. A naval base in California was gone in an instant. A missile command center in Russia vanished in a flash. Military installations in China, India, Britain, and a dozen other countries were destroyed before anyone could understand what was happening. Lucy. Warren was still in New Mexico when the attack began. She heard the explosion before she saw it. A base 50 miles away had been hit, and the ground shook like an earthquake. She ran outside and looked up at the sky, and what she saw made her heart stop. Ships were descending through the clouds. Massive ships, each one bigger than a city block, with hulls that looked like black metal and weapons that glowed with orange light. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like a storm rolling in over the ocean. Henry Shaw grabbed her arm. "We need to move, now." They drove east as fast as they could. Behind them, the harvester ships landed near Albuquerque. Lucy could see them in her rearview mirror, and she could see the crowds of people running in panic. She wanted to stop to help, but Henry kept driving. "We can't save them," he said. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We can only try to find someone who can." Across the world, the story was the same. Harvester ships landed in New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Beijing, Sao Paulo, and dozens of other cities. Their doors opened, and Velthory soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They were tall and gray-skinned, with armor that covered their bodies and weapons that could kill from 100 meters away. Humans tried to fight back. Police officers fired their handguns at the invaders. Soldiers launched rockets and dropped bombs. A brave pilot in France flew his fighter jet directly into a harvester ship, hoping to damage it. None of it worked. The Velthory had energy shields that stopped every bullet and absorbed every explosion. Human weapons were like toys to them. They did not even slow down. The harvesting began within hours of landing. Velthory soldiers moved through the streets, stunning humans with their weapons and dragging them onto transport platforms. The platforms carried hundreds of people at a time into the harvester ships, where they were processed with cold efficiency. Commander Zethral watched the operation from orbit and felt satisfied. The humans were behaving exactly as expected. They fought at first, then they ran, and eventually they surrendered. It was the same pattern his species had seen on every world they had ever harvested. Initial collection rates are exceeding projections, Kethver reported. We have processed nearly 100 million specimens in the first 12 hours. Excellent, Zethral said. Increase the pace. I want this world emptied within 30 rotations. But Zethral did not see what was happening in the shadows. He did not see the small groups of humans who had escaped the initial attacks and were hiding in basements and caves and abandoned buildings. He did not see them gathering weapons, sharing information, and making plans. In a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, a group of survivors had gathered. The bunker was old, built during a war that happened before most of them were born. It was cramped and cold, but it was safe. The Velthory sensors could not detect them under so much rock. General Patricia Cole was in charge. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had seen combat before, but nothing like this. Half of her command staff was dead. The other half was missing. She had maybe 200 soldiers left, along with a handful of civilians who had been lucky enough to find refuge here. Lucy, Warren, and Henry Shaw arrived at the bunker 3 days after the invasion began. They had driven for 2 days, avoiding roads and hiding from Velthory patrols, before they found a resistance convoy heading for the mountains. General Cole listened carefully as Lucy explained her data. The command ship behind the moon. The energy signatures. Everything she had discovered before the invasion. You knew they were coming, Cole said. It was not a question. I tried to warn people, Lucy said. Nobody listened? Cole nodded slowly. There was no anger in her face, only exhaustion. Nobody ever listens until it's too late. But you're here now, and you know more about these creatures than anyone else on Earth. I need you to learn more. Learn what? Lucy asked. Everything, Cole said. Their language, their technology, their weaknesses. They think we're animals to be harvested. I want to prove them wrong. Lucy accepted the task. Over the next few weeks, she worked with captured Velthory equipment and intercepted communications. The aliens did not bother to encrypt their messages because they did not believe humans could understand them. This was another mistake. Lucy learned their language. She learned how their ships worked. She learned about their empire, their history, and their culture of conquest. And she learned something that gave her hope that the Velthory were not invincible. They had weaknesses. Their armor could be damaged by certain frequencies of sound. Their bodies needed specific atmospheric conditions to function at full strength. Their command structure was rigid, designed to flow from the top down. If the top was removed, the entire system would collapse. She brought this information to General Cole. The general studied it for a long time before speaking. They came here thinking we were prey, Cole said finally. They thought we would be easy. They were wrong. She looked at the small group of survivors gathered in the bunker. Soldiers and scientists, engineers and doctors, ordinary people who had lost everything but refused to give up. We can't beat them in a straight fight, Cole continued. But we don't have to. We just have to hurt them enough to make them bleed. And then we find a way to cut off their head. Lucy nodded. For the first time since the invasion began, she felt something other than fear. She felt the beginning of hope. Part 3. The turning point. 3 months had passed since the invasion began. The world above the bunker had changed completely. Cities that once held millions of people were now empty. Roads that had been filled with cars were silent. The Valkyrie harvester ships moved from place to place, collecting humans wherever they found them. Nearly 3 billion people had been taken. Some were sent to work in mines on distant worlds. Others were used for genetic experiments. The Valkyrie did not see this as cruelty. To them, humans were simply resources to be used, but the resistance had survived. Small groups of fighters had spread across the globe, hiding in mountains and forests and ruined buildings. They could not defeat the Valkyrie in open battle, but they could make their occupation painful. They attacked supply convoys. They destroyed communication towers. They rescued prisoners whenever they could dot in the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Lucy Warren had become one of the most important people in the resistance. Her translations of Valkyrie communications had saved countless lives. She knew where the aliens would strike before they arrived. She knew which routes were safe and which were dangerous, but she also knew something else. The resistance could fight for years and still lose. The Valkyrie had too many soldiers, too many ships, too much technology. Unless something changed, humanity would eventually be wiped out. "We need to destroy their command ship," Lucy said at a strategy meeting. "Everything flows from the Eternal Dominion. If we can take it out, their entire fleet will fall into chaos." General Cole looked at her with tired eyes. "I agree. But how? That ship is behind the moon. We don't have anything that can reach it." "I might have an idea," said a voice from the corner of the room. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Nina Castillo. She was a small woman with wild hair and ink stains on her fingers. Before the invasion, she had been working on experimental physics at a university in Texas. Now she was one of the Resistance's top scientists. "I've been studying the wreckage from crashed Valkyrie scout ships," Nina explained. "Their engines use something called spatial compression. They fold space itself to travel faster than light. The math is incredibly complex, but I think I understand the basic principles. You want to build one of their engines?" Cole asked. "No," Nina said. "I want to use the same principles to build a bomb. A weapon that can fold space and appear right next to their command ship before they even know it's coming." The room was silent for a moment. Then Henry Shaw spoke up. "Is that even possible? We don't have their manufacturing capabilities. We don't have their materials. We don't need to match their technology," Nina said. "We just need to make something that works once. It doesn't have to be elegant. It doesn't have to be efficient. It just has to get close enough to the Eternal Dominion to destroy it." General Cole considered this for a long time. It was a desperate plan, the kind of plan that only made sense when all other options were gone. But all other options were gone. "Do it," she said. "Whatever you need, you'll have it." The project was given the name Prometheus. Nina gathered a team of engineers and scientists, anyone who had survived the invasion and had useful skills. They worked in a hidden laboratory deep within the bunker, surrounded by salvaged Valkyrie components and jury-rigged human equipment. The work was difficult and dangerous. Spatial compression technology had never been attempted by humans before. Many of the equations had to be figured out from scratch. Components failed. Experiments exploded. 2 engineers died when a test device collapsed and crushed them. But slowly, piece by piece, the weapon took shape. Lucy continued her work translating Velthory communications. She learned that Commander Zethral was growing frustrated. The human resistance was taking more casualties than expected. The harvest was falling behind schedule. Reports from the surface described attacks that came from nowhere and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. "They're calling us vermin," Lucy reported to the general. "They say we're like insects that refuse to be crushed." Cole smiled grimly. "Good. Let them underestimate us." While the scientists worked on Prometheus, the resistance fighters continued their guerrilla war. They learned to use captured Velthory weapons. They discovered that certain sonic frequencies could disrupt alien armor. They found that the Velthory could not breathe Earth's atmosphere for extended periods without their helmets, and they exploited this weakness whenever they could. Every small victory bought more time. Every dead Velthory soldier was one less enemy to fight. After 3 months of work, Nina Castillo called a meeting. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. But she also looked proud. "It's ready," she said. "The Prometheus device is complete." She showed them the weapon. It was small, about the size of a car, and it looked nothing like Velthory technology. It was rough and ugly, covered in wires and welded metal plates. But inside was a core of compressed antimatter, surrounded by a spatial folding mechanism that would carry it across the void. "How does it work?" Cole asked. "Simple," Nina said. "We launch it from Earth. It flies toward the moon using conventional propulsion. When it gets close enough, the spatial compression activates. The device folds space, appears next to the Eternal Dominion, and detonates. The antimatter explosion will destroy anything within 100 kilometers. Will it work?" Lucy asked. Nina hesitated. "In theory, yes. But we've never tested the spatial compression at full scale. There's a chance it could fail. There's a chance it could collapse and destroy itself before reaching the target. But it's the best chance we have." General Cole looked at the ugly little device that might save the human race. She thought about all the people who had died, all the cities that had been emptied, all the suffering that the Velthory had caused. "Launch it," she said. That night, in a hidden valley in the Andes Mountains, a rocket lifted off into the darkness. It carried the Prometheus device toward the stars, toward the ship that had brought death to Earth. The fate of humanity rode with it. Part 4. The hunt begins. The Prometheus device flew through the darkness of space for 3 days. It was a tiny thing, barely visible against the vast emptiness between Earth and the moon. The Resistance had launched it in secret, using a rocket assembled from salvaged parts and hidden from Velthory sensors. Nina Castillo watched the tracking data from her terminal in the bunker. She had not slept since the launch. Every hour, she checked the device's position, its power levels, its structural integrity. Everything was working so far, but she knew that the real test was still ahead. On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Zethral was preparing his morning report. The harvest was proceeding, but slower than planned. Human resistance had proven more stubborn than expected. His superiors in the Empire would not be pleased with the delays. "Commander," Kethver said suddenly, "we have detected an anomaly approaching from Earth." Zethral turned to look at the sensor display. A small object was moving through space, heading toward the moon. Its energy signature was strange, a chaotic mixture that his sensors could not identify. "What is it?" he asked. "Unknown, Commander. It does not match any human technology in our database. It appears to be some kind of projectile, but the propulsion system is unlike anything we have seen before." Zethral felt a flicker of unease. The humans were primitive. They should not be able to create anything that his sensors could not recognize. "Destroy it," he ordered. The Eternal Dominion's weapon systems locked onto the small object. A beam of concentrated energy shot through space, fast enough to reach the target in seconds. But seconds were too long. In the bunker on Earth, Nina saw the warning flash on her screen. The Valkyrie had detected the device. They were firing. She held her breath and watched the numbers scroll past. Distance to target: 50,000 kilometers. Spatial compression initiating. The Prometheus device did something that human technology had never done before. It folded space. Reality bent around the small craft, compressing the distance between it and the Eternal Dominion into nothing. One moment, it was thousands of kilometers away. The next moment, it was less than 1 kilometer from the command ship's reactor core. The Valkyrie weapons. Fire passed through empty space where the device had been a fraction of a second before. Commander Zethral had exactly 2 seconds to understand what was happening. He saw the strange object appear on his sensors, impossibly close. He saw the energy readings spike beyond anything he had ever seen. And then he saw nothing at all. The antimatter detonation was visible from Earth. For a brief moment, there was a second sun behind the moon, a flash of light brighter than anything nature could create. Lucy Wan stood outside the bunker and watched it with tears in her eyes. Did it work? General Cole asked, standing beside her. Lucy checked her equipment. The Valkyrie communication channels, which had been filled with constant chatter for months, were suddenly silent. Then, slowly, confused voices began to speak. Officers on harvester ships asking for orders that would never come. Soldiers on the ground demanding explanations from commanders who no longer existed. It worked, Lucy said. The Eternal Dominion is gone. Zethral is dead. The effect on the Valkyrie fleet was immediate and devastating. Their entire command structure had been built around the central authority of the command ship. Without orders from above, individual captains did not know what to do. Some tried to continue the harvest. Some attempted to retreat. Some simply stopped moving entirely, waiting for instructions that would never arrive. General Cole wasted no time. She sent messages to every resistance cell across the globe. The message was simple: attack now. Across the world, humans who had been hiding in shadows emerged to fight. They attacked harvester ships with weapons they had spent months preparing. Sonic cannons that disrupted Valkyrie armor. Chemical agents that targeted their unique biology. Explosives placed in exactly the right locations to breach their shields. In New York, a group of resistance fighters stormed a harvester ship that had landed in Central Park. The Valkyrie soldiers inside were confused and disorganized. Their usual coordination shattered. The humans fought their way to the bridge and captured the vessel intact. In Tokyo, a former engineer named Kenji used his knowledge of structural weaknesses to bring down a harvester ship with nothing but a truck full of explosives and perfect timing. In London, a teenage girl named Sophie led a group of survivors into a processing center and freed over 10,000 prisoners before the Valkyrie could respond. The stories were different everywhere, but the result was the same. For the first time since the invasion began, humans were winning. Commander Zethral had believed that breaking humanity's military would break humanity itself. He had been wrong. Humans did not need armies to fight. They did not need orders from above. Every individual, from soldiers to scientists to ordinary people, could become a warrior when the need arose. Within a week, the Valkyrie had lost half of their ships on Earth. Within a month, they had lost 2/3. The survivors retreated to fortified positions, hoping that reinforcements would come from the Empire. But the Empire was far away, and Earth's defenders were close. General Cole established her headquarters in a captured harvester ship. She stood on the bridge where Valkyrie commanders had once given orders for the destruction of human cities. Now she gave different orders. "Find them," she said. Find every last one of them. They came to our world to hunt us. Now we hunt them." The soldiers cheered. But Lucy Warren did not cheer. She was already thinking about what came next. The Velthari on Earth were just a fraction of their empire's power. Somewhere out there, among the stars, hundreds of other harvester fleets were doing the other species what they had tried to do to humanity. The war on Earth was almost over, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning. Part 5. The Predator Awakens. 2 years had passed since the invasion began. 2 years of war, of suffering, of death. But humanity had survived. More than that, humanity had won. The last Velthari soldiers on Earth surrendered on a cold morning in December. They had been hiding in an underground facility in Siberia, waiting for rescue that never came. When human forces finally breached their defenses, they found only 53 aliens left, starving and desperate. General Patricia Cole accepted their surrender personally. She looked at the creatures who had come to harvest her species, who had killed billions of her people, and she felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Take them to the detention center," she ordered. "We have questions that need answers." The war was over, but the work was just beginning. Humanity had captured 17 Velthari ships during the 2 years of fighting. Engineers and scientists studied them carefully, learning their secrets and adapting their technology. Within months, humans were building their own versions of Velthari engines, weapons, and shields. They also learned the truth about the galaxy. The Velthari had kept detailed records of their conquests. Lucy Warren spent months translating their databases, and what she found was horrifying. The Empire had destroyed hundreds of civilizations over 11,000 years. Species that had built great cities, created beautiful art, and dreamed of peace were now nothing but footnotes in Velthari history files. But she also found something else. Not every world had been completely harvested. Some species had been taken as slaves rather than destroyed. They were still alive somewhere, serving their Velthari masters, waiting for freedom that might never come. "We can't just stay here and rebuild," Lucy said at a meeting of the new Earth government. The old nations had been shattered by the invasion, and something new had risen from the ashes. A unified council made up of representatives from every surviving community. The Velthari Empire is still out there. They still have hundreds of worlds. They're still hunting. "What do you suggest?" asked Dr. Henry Shaw, who now served as the council's chief science advisor. "We take the war to them," Lucy said. "We build a fleet. We travel to their space. And we show them what it means to be hunted." The council debated for 3 days. Some members argued that humanity should focus on rebuilding, on healing the wounds of the invasion. Others said that attacking the Empire would only bring more destruction. In the end, General Cole spoke the words that decided the matter. "They will come back," she said. "Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But eventually, the Velthari will send another fleet to finish what they started. We can wait for that day, hiding on a little world and hoping they forget about us. Or we can make sure they never have the chance." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. Construction of the first human interstellar warship began the following month. It was built in orbit, using Velthari technology modified with human innovation. The engineers who designed it had learned from their enemies' mistakes. Where Velthari ships were rigid and hierarchical, the new human vessel was flexible and adaptable. Where Velthari weapons were powerful but predictable, human weapons were creative and unpredictable. They called the ship Retribution. Lucy Warren was appointed as its commander. She had never wanted to be a soldier, but the invasion had changed her. The young astronomer who had once spent her nights listening to the silent stars was gone. In her place was a woman who had seen the worst the universe had to offer and refused to look away. "You know this might be a one-way trip," Henry said, As he watched her prepare to board the ship, Lucy nodded. I know. But those species out there, the ones the Velthri enslaved, they deserve a chance. Someone has to fight for them. And if you fail? Lucy looked up at the stars. They did not seem silent anymore. They seemed full of possibilities, full of dangers, full of hope. Then someone else will try again, she said. That's what humans do. We don't give up. The Retribution launched on a spring morning, rising through Earth's atmosphere and slipping into the darkness of space. Behind it, a world that had almost been destroyed watched with mixed emotions. Fear for the future, grief for the past, and something else, something that had been rare since the invasion began. Pride. Admiral Lucy Warren stood on the bridge of her ship and gave the order that would change galactic history. Set course for the Velthri border, she said. It's time to hunt. The ship's engines hummed as space folded around them. Stars stretched into lines of light, and then they were gone, racing toward a distant empire that did not know it was about to face something new. For 11,000 years, the Velthri had been the galaxy's ultimate predators. They had hunted without fear, harvested without mercy, and ruled without challenge. They believed they were the masters of all they surveyed. They were wrong. Somewhere in the void between stars, the Retribution carried a message that every enslaved species would soon hear. Help was coming. Freedom was possible. The hunters had become the hunted. On Earth, children who had been born during the invasion grew up hearing stories of the war. They learned about the brave scientists who had built the Prometheus device. They learned about the soldiers who had fought against impossible odds. And they learned about Admiral Lucy Warren, who had looked at the stars and refused to be afraid. What happened then? The children would ask. And their parents would smile and say, then we became something the galaxy had never seen before. We became the predators. The story was not over. It was just beginning. But for the first time in 11,000 years, the Velthri Empire had something to fear. And its name was humanity.